Welcome to the Life is Great podcast. I'm Yitzwyne, the Rabbi of Young Israel, Aish of Las Vegas, and I want to welcome you. Everybody has challenges. Everyone has moments in their life that they are, they feel a little sad or aggravated or anxious. What do you do in those times when you are feeling sad, anxious, aggravated? Are you able to lift yourself up quickly? Part of the Life is Great philosophy is that we have to be able to ride the highs longer. And when you get into a valley, you got to be able to get out of them quicker. Life is not only about the highs, and it is certainly not about the valleys. And the valleys are very, very important. But we don't want to be stuck in a situation where the valleys last too long. We want to be able to take the challenges for what they are meant for and elevate our lives. So the question is, why do we have these challenges? So it's an interesting idea, by the way. There was in the 18th century, there was a great man, Rabbi Salanter, and he began something which is known as the Musar movement. Musar is like the personal development movement. He was the original Tony Robbins, okay? And so he started off and he said that everything in life is a test. That we should view our lives as going from one test to the next test to the next. Now, if you don't like tests, you might be a little, I'm not into this. But if you understand the purpose of a test, it's not to get the grade. The purpose of the test is so that you know how well you're doing. A test is actually a very valuable thing. By the way, I tell you, that was one of the greatest insights that I had when I first went to rabbinical school. I was just turning 18 years old. And, I went to public high school, and, public high school, you got to get your grade so you get to university. When I went to yeshiva and they're giving us these tests and they're saying, by the way, if you are getting under 80%, you're done. Like you're, pretty much every test you had to pass. And when I went to one of the rabbis and asked, why are we so strict over here? He said, listen, the purpose of the test is so that you will know how well you're getting the information. It's not so we know. The rabbis know it. The people who are learning, they already know. The teachers know what they're talking about. It's so that you'll know. You'll be able to evaluate it. And if you're consistently not, getting over 80%, then you're learning the wrong way or the wrong stuff or something wrong is going on. And it's only about how to guide us. So if you view that as, well, take that and translate into the idea that everything in this life is a test. If you're looking at you look at your stock portfolio and you go, oh my gosh, things are so volatile now, and I'm bothered by it. Okay, well, that's not how you want to deal with your test. That means there's something wrong, and it's not the thing that's wrong is not necessarily in the government or in the economy. It might be how I'm assimilating the situation. If you're in a relationship and it's more tourist, it's more pain and suffering than pleasure. Okay, so you want to know that, you want to understand it, you want to figure out why, you want to figure out what role you play in that misery, because you've got to be able to lift yourself out of it, or maybe lift yourself out of the relationship, possibly. So understanding that things are a test, financially, relationships, health-wise. Your health is a test. And we all know people that have been very, very healthy when they're young, and then all of a sudden one day, boom, it's like they lose it. And, so that's a test. How do we deal with it? It's so that we know if we are growing in a proper way in a spiritual path. So here the thing is that every test, every challenge is a test from God. And a person who is living with the reality of the Almighty, of an all-powerful, all-purposeful, all-involved God. A person who's living with that reality understands that every test is perfectly created specifically for you at that time. It's not for anybody else. If it was better, if it could be better, it would be better, right? If it could be easier, it would be easier. If there was a time that was more appropriate to come into your life, no, you know what? It would come then. It was very interesting. My father spent his life as in the life insurance industry. Okay. So anytime you hear something bad happened, if someone died or they got sick or they fell, they broke their arm, whatever, he goes, these things never happen at a good time. They happen at the best time. It's never a good time. It's the best time. Because now that's when you, what a pain in the neck. But you know what? That's the pain in the neck that is divinely ordained and perfect for you. So that is the first step, to realize that every day is a series of tests that we're going to be dealing with. Some tests, it's a test of prosperity, and some tests, it's a test of poverty in every area of our lives. How we deal with it speaks volumes about who we are and how we are growing. And the ultimate pathway is, it is in the journey. The journey is no less important than the destination. But it's obviously, life is not only about the journey. It's not only, I love that expression. It's all about the journey. It's not only about the journey. Okay. There are destinations we want to reach to have a meaningful life. But we have to recognize that these tests every single day, they help us figure out where we're going. Okay. So that's the first thing. Approach every challenge as a test from God, as a gift from God, perfectly designed for you at that time. Okay. The next thing is we look at our role models in our lives and see how did they deal with tests. When we look at other people who we view as great people, then we can model ourselves after them and apply their attitudes and their approaches to our lives. So the greatest of the great. Who is the greatest of the great? Which person had more influence over humanity than anyone else? Chirp, 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 chirp. Well, I'll give you my opinion. Abraham. Abraham was the one who brought, we call him Avram Avinu. He was the one, Avram, our forefather. He was the one who brought monotheism into the world, with the consequence that every monotheist must teach others to be monotheists. So you look in the world today, and of course Judaism, but Christianity and Islam, and all the people around who are not, they don't classify themselves in any particular religion, but they believe in one God. All that comes from him. Every concept of social responsibility, of dignity of life, of having a relationship with the Almighty and having a proper relationship with humanity was funneled through Avram. Now, the Talmud tells us, Abraham. Now, first of all, he's called Avram Ivri. Ivri means the one who crossed over. So we speak about Ivri as a Jew, Abraham the Jew. But Ivri literally means he crossed over. What did he cross over? So the rabbis of the Talmud explain he crossed over the Euphrates River physically and spiritually. Physically, he crossed over the river on his pathway to Israel. Spiritually, he crossed over the Euphrates River as a way of saying, all of idolatry and all spiritual confusion I'm putting over there, and I am going to go over here. I'm crossing over the river apart from humanity, being morally independent. That was the defining trait of Avram, where he did not read the headline and then determine the headlines in the paper and then determine morality. He was the one who determined morality, and eventually either the headlines picked it up or they didn't pick it up. He was an independent, and because he knew a truth that is so difficult for people to assimilate. We are born alone and we die alone. That's it. Our lives are filled with interactions with other people, and those interactions, they bring us pleasure, they bring us frustration. The lack of proper interactions bring us loneliness. And every relationship we have is a pathway to connect with God, whether as a parent, as a child, as a friend, as a mentor, as a mentee. All of these different relationships are ways that are different elements of having a connection with God. And that's why we have these relationships. But we wake up in the morning, I got to look at myself in the mirror. I don't look at you, and you don't look at me. And by the way, if you wake up in the mirror and you go to the bathroom and you look in the mirror and you see me, watch out, because that'd be real freaky, okay? Like, that's a little creepy, okay? No, you see yourself, and you're born alone, you die alone. And Avram understood that. It's about having a relationship with God and God only. So to do that, you need to be fiercely independent. Fiercely. Now, it doesn't mean you're walking around saying, well, I do what I want. That's not what you do. You stop and you say, okay, listen, I have the Torah. I have rabbis, teachers. I have friends. I I have students, I have a moral compass, I have, what I must do in this world. So the thing is that Avram, how did he deal with his challenges? So the Talmud tells us that he was tested 10 times. 10 times Avram was tested, and he passed every one of the tests, and that showed his tremendous love, how much he loved God. So we know some of his tests, they started off with, him being the only monotheist and non-idolater in Ur Kasdim, and he was thrown in a fiery furnace, and then picking up and teaching people about God, and that was a test. And then leaving when he's 75 years old, leaving his family and his birthplace and everything he knew, just because God told him go. And then after he goes after this long trip, instead of things getting good for him, there's a famine in the land. Then he's got to go down to Egypt. Then he goes down to Egypt. The Paro abducts his wife Sarah, and how he deals with that. And then he comes back with tremendous wealth, and how he deals with the wealth. Now he's in the land of Israel, and he gets separated from his nephew Lot, and then Lot gets captured, and he has to risk his life and all of his possessions going to rescue his nephew in this war. And then he comes back, and eventually, he has a son, Yishmael, the father of all the Arabs, and he has to send Yishmael away because he's a bad influence on his son Isaac. And then he has a bris, he has a circumcision, and he makes a very public acknowledgement to everyone that you should connect with God. And then the last 10th test was God comes to him and says, go sacrifice your son, your only son, the one you love, Isaac, go sacrifice him, and how he dealt with that. Those were his 10 tests. How did Abraham deal with the tests? Amazing. He had a spirit of enthusiasm over and over again when he had to do the difficult thing. The Torah tells us that Abraham woke up early in the morning in order to saddle his donkey and go do what God wanted him to do. To me, the most amazing thing about that expression is not that he rode a donkey. Everyone rode a donkey then, right? Today, he woke up in the morning and charged his Tesla, and then he got in and drove away. Okay, so what happened? What was so amazing about Abraham at that time, dealing with those challenges, those tests? He had a good night's sleep. If the Torah says that, God comes and says, tomorrow you're going to go and take your son to a place I will show you and sacrifice him. And then the next line, it says, and Abraham woke up early in the morning and saddled his donkey in order to go on the trip. Well, if he woke up early in the morning, that means he had a good night's sleep. If God came to you and said, go, here's your test, the test of your existence. And you say, okay. And you're able to get a good night's sleep. That's amazing. And then you get up early in the morning to do what the Almighty wants you to do, even though it's got to be brutally difficult. That's incredible. So the first thing is Abraham leaned into his tests. He didn't run away from his challenges. He said, no, God's giving me a challenge. I need this challenge. God loves me more than I could possibly ever love my children. So I need that challenge. It must be good for me. He gave it to me, this challenge, today. So I got to get into it. I'm going to go for it. That's the first point. But not only did he lean into the test, he accepted the test with joy, which is illustrated by the fact that he was embracing every challenge. Wow, this is big. As we go through our day tomorrow and next week, and you have these little tests. Some are little tests, not a big deal. Some are big tests. You have tests of prosperity or poverty. Could be financially, could be in relationships. Could be in your just spiritual mood. Could be physically. People get hurt, People stay healthy, right? Sometimes they want to get arrogant because they're so healthy and buff. Sometimes they get a little down because they, stepped on the wrong corner of the road and on the curb, and now they can't really walk. Everyone's got issues, right? It's that pickleball. Darn pickleball always gets in the way. So what happens is, how do you take that how do you address that test? Absorb it. Know that God's running the world. Remember that it's designed for you. Embrace it. Say, thank you, God. Thank you for the test. Thank you for the test. I thank you, God, for giving me this opportunity to be joyful and embrace the test and figure out what is the proper response over here. And in order to help you do that, one last point. What is the opposite of pain? What is the opposite of pain? Many of you just said pleasure. And we say, no, that's decadence. The opposite of pain is no pain. The opposite of pain is comfort. Pain that we go through, if we use it properly, is that which propels us to doing meaningful, purposeful things and personal growth. The Talmud says, Lafum Sar Agra, according to the effort is the reward. Vince Lombardi used to say, no pain, no gain. Okay, that was the way he said it. According to the effort is the reward. Pain is good for us. Every meaningful thing you ever did in your life, you exerted a lot of effort, you took the pain, a lot of the times you probably took it joyfully, and therefore you were able to overcome those challenges. Okay, so those few things to think about as we go into the summer months. And now I want to bring over our very favorite Dana Rutherford, producer of this program, and she has a couple of questions that you guys sent in. So please, Dana, share. Come on.
Hi, everyone.
Get in here.
Thanks for my wine.
We're in my office and my back door's open. That's fine. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so the first question says, my sister's super sweet. She just started dating and she has an unusual issue. She's uncomfortable when guys like her too much. Oh, no. She gets shy and starts to doubt or worry. How can she stay positive and focus on the right emotions when she's dating?
Okay, again, that is a challenge when people like you too much, right? So the first thing is she has to learn what she wants so that she can identify it, so that she is in the driver's seat in the dating world. It is a very big mistake to always stay in the back seat. You've got to say, especially in the society that most people live in, the first thing is the person's sister needs to know what they're looking for, what they want. So when it comes across them, they can spot it. That's the first thing. Then she also has to understand, what does it mean to like someone too much? What are the boundaries that she has? And she has to be very clear in terms of identifying those boundaries. But again, when someone's expressing interest, that's a test from God. That's the Almighty sending you something. Now, part of the test might be that you're doing something right, that you're attractive. So in that element, it might be encouragement. And the person might not be the kind of person that you want, in which case the test would be, what am I putting out that I'm attracting this kind of person? I've got to make sure that I'm projecting exactly the messages to attract the kind of person I want. So every interaction is a test from God, and it's to help us help us to know how well we're doing. So that's what you should think about.
Excellent. All right, and the second question says, my brother's work associate is very unhappy at work. He's a doctor at my brother's hospital, but he has always wanted to be an engineer. In order to accomplish his dream, he would have to go back to school, get another degree in his late 30s to build skyscrapers. Do you think he should go back to school and pursue this dream? Should he give up his path and pursue a new one?
Okay, so you got to know your pleasures. This is actually going to be the topic of the next Life is Great. A person must know their pleasure, because what happens, if you know what your pleasures are in your life, then you can make priority decisions in the right way. You want to go on a trip. You got $1,000. You're going to bring a guest with you on the trip. So you think, maybe I want to bring my boyfriend, girlfriend, okay? Because I want some intimacy. Or you say, maybe I'm going to bring my brother or my sister because I'm close with my siblings and I want to continue that relationship, and there's an opportunity to get close. Or maybe you stop and say, a friend of mine is going through a divorce. They really just need someone, some bro time, or they just need someone to hang out, right? Okay, so this is just a kindness. So you got $1,000. You got a couple days. You're going to give it as a gift to somebody. What's your pleasure? What pleasure are you going after at this point in your life? It might be this time you go for this pleasure, next time you go for that pleasure. But that's really the essence of this person's question, that they've got to know what is their real pleasure in life in a real sense. And then when you know your pleasures, then you can choose, you can set the priorities. And we will talk about that next time on the Life is Great podcast. Thanks for being part of it. If you have the questions, you can email the questions into rabbiyitzwyne@gmail.com. That's rabbiyitzwyne@gmail.com. And don't forget to read Life is Great. You can pick it up on Amazon and check out all of the other wonderful, there it goes. Considerably younger there, but okay. Thank you so much.